Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. You'll note that all attendees are muted for the presentation portion of today's session because we are recording. But I do know this is a small group, and I know that Rebecca is comfortable with people unmuting themselves and asking questions or commenting. And I know that she's left time in the presentation for that, so please feel free to do that. Okay, I'm going to do my little formal intro and then we'll get started. So, good afternoon and welcome to our workshop Wednesday. The topic this month is Ripples of Recovery, anti-stigma campaign strategy, and we're going to be talking about empathy. My name is Genevieve Berry, and I'm a program manager for the Mountain Plains Rural Opioid Technical Assistance Center. And our facilitator, our trainer today is Rebecca Schussler Marshall. So again, as I mentioned prior to starting when Nina and I were talking, if you all have attended any of Rebecca's sessions, you know what a treat you're in for, but I think she is an especially adept trainer to guide us, to help us navigate through this topic. So, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If we need to end today's presentation unexpectedly, I'll follow up with you using your registration information. We are recording today's session, and so we ask that everybody keep themselves muted unless we're in a discussion or you have a question, and that's just to avoid any background interference. You can always ask questions using the chat feature. I will have the slides and recording posted on the MP Rotac website. And as you know, if you've been with us before, I send out a training follow-up email and I'll send you that link. And I'll also include a copy of Rebecca's presentation in that email. Certificates of attendance are available for today's session. Those instructions will be in the follow-up email, but essentially you just email me with the title and date of the training that you need a certificate for. But please remember that to receive a certificate of attendance, you must view at least 50% of today's presentation and complete our brief training survey. So today's presentation is provided free of charge by the Mountain Plains Rural Opioid Technical Assistance Center. It is available in the public domain and should not be distributed for a fee without the express written permission of MP Rotac. The views and opinions expressed during today's presentation are those of our presenter and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS or SAMHSA is intended or should be inferred. If you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. So just a quick summary of the MP Rotac grant. We are a 3-year grant and we're in year 3. We serve the Region 8 states of Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. We are a center of excellence tasked with developing and disseminating community-based training and technical assistance information that focuses on the impact of opioid and stimulant misuse for individuals, families, and communities. So we are funded it through SAMHSA, as I mentioned, to provide this training. And as part of receiving this funding, we're required to submit data related to the quality of this event. This is where I make my plea, and I'm asking all of you to take just a few minutes and complete this brief survey. Now more than ever, this feedback information is really critical to get back to SAMHSA so we can continue offering free trainings and developing different products. Such as, yay, our Ripples of Recovery Toolkit. If you've been to the website, maybe you've seen the downloadable items. All of these you can download. They have suggestions for how to do social media posts. If you've got a particular event that you can align the anti-stigma or stigma reduction campaign with, it's got some really great like recipe cards uh, in it with messages on the back that you can hand out. And the nice thing about the recipe cards is that they were developed by a couple of our trainers who did a nutrition series for us, and they specifically tailored these recipes to fit with food deserts, with items that you could buy at Dollar General or the gas station or a convenience store. So they're really helpful. I thought that was such a clever way to get the messaging out. To just kind of work on reducing stigma in your communities. So anyway, here is the website. I'll include this information in your follow-up email along with the survey. I'll also put the survey link in the chat, and I'll try and pop that slide up at the end so you can grab that link again. So now it is my pleasure to hand the microphone and the slide share over to our wonderful trainer, Rebecca Schisler-Marshall. Rebecca, I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And with that, I'll start sharing. This is the passing of the slideshow. I'm so glad that you all are here today. I am really grateful to be here to talk about empathy. It's one of, I think, as Genevieve was mentioning in the beginning, empathy is such a important aspect to focus on when we're talking about recovery and when we're talking about really, moving through daily life. This is one of the biggest pieces that I think to be kind of focused on today. And so we're going to spend some time talking about it. If you haven't met me before, I'm Rebecca. I'm an integrative life and wellness coach. I have been trained in mindfulness and in yoga. I have a book called Whole Body Upgrade. I used to research mindfulness and wellness and stress reduction, as well as cognitive rehabilitation in the areas of post-stroke recovery, in cognitive wellness. And this is how you can get in touch with me if you have any questions, or my website. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions, please ask them during the presentation, but also feel free to reach out to me afterwards. So I wanted to talk about this. We're talking about this ripples of recovery, which is how to reduce the stigma. And in that toolkit that Genevieve had at the beginning, there are 3 pieces to this toolkit. There's empathy, which we're going to talk about today, awareness, and community. And I just wanted you to first start with like the big, broader picture of how this toolkit, of how this framework can be really important to understand this one leg of the triangle, or one leg of the, the foundation here of empathy. So in this reducing the stigma, there is this first understanding, right, of the challenges and the feelings that other people have of what is happening through our neighbor. And you can use this in relationship to substance misuse, and you can use it in other areas of your life too. It's not just in this particular area, but empathy is really important in that, so that we can help clear any barriers to support. It also includes awareness then, that raising the awareness of what the signs of addiction are, of what addiction is, of how to support people. That awareness is the other key. And then the third one is community, having the resources and support networks for a safe environment of support, right? And so empathy plays into community, empathy plays into awareness, and vice versa. They're all important and work together. So today we're going to focus on empathy, and I'm sure you all know what empathy is, but just to kind of, I wanted to, these pieces of it, when you're dealing with the definition, it becomes like, oh, of course, like, why is empathy important? Well, it's about seeing things from another person's perspective, right? From understanding what someone else might be going through, their emotions, their choices that they may have, or their non-choices, right, that may be happening. Also, while being aware that, well, that may not be my experience, right? That is their experience. And another example is the ability to share someone's feelings or experiences by imagining, right? I love that word, imagining what it would be like to be in that person's situation. And when we have that imagining of like, oh gosh, what must that be like? Then we can have a much better understanding. We can have a much better relationship in our community. And so I want to talk a little bit about why empathy, and I added in compassion here because those are very closely aligned, empathy and compassion. And to me, they serve some different functions, but they're both very much a part of what we're talking about today. So empathy and compassion are important because of connection. So we know that empathy is a critical part of any kind of relationship that we may have, right? So if we're building relationships either with individuals or in communities, that empathy is an important part of it. It's a crucial aspect of having connections with other individuals. So when we understand what someone else is going through, then it becomes a little easier to go, oh, that makes so much more sense when I know that that's the background. It also can help us understand our own emotions. So it can be a self-awareness tool as well as an awareness of other tool. There's also some beautiful evidence. I was reading this research again recently about how empathy, in and of itself, especially positive empathy, has been shown to reduce stigma significantly. So, using something like empathy as a way of supporting individuals and their community can help reduce the stigma. Thus, that's why Ripples of Recovery, the reducing the stigma, has empathy as one of its main components. And the other piece of why empathy and compassion are important are thinking about what I always call that inner voice, right? That critical voice that we have. When we have self-compassion as a form of empathy, it encourages kindness not only to the self, but to others. So often those with the most um, mean inner critical voices are reflected externally as well. And so when we have empathy for ourselves, it is so much easier to have empathy for others, recognizing that this human experience, right, is not just my experience, but this is the human condition that we go through. And as Genevieve was pointing out earlier, like all of these emotions, the anger, the guilt, the sadness that can come up when we see like, oh, what must it be like for that individual who's going through that experience, or that family member who's going through that experience of having a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, an uncle who is going through substance misuse and is going through recovery. So I wanted to do a few exercises today to explore empathy so that we can work on really, getting maybe slightly uncomfortable when we're looking at some of those pieces of stigma. So here is an example that this is from Clinton and Poloni, and I would love for you to read this, and I'll read it out loud too. So imagine this. You're sitting on a train, and a stranger about your age sits down next to you. The stranger is friendly and compliments you on your style. As you strike up a conversation, you learn that the stranger has just started a new job. As you learn more, the stranger discloses to you that they are a person who injects drugs. They tell you about how challenging it was to find employment despite their training and experience in their field. They go on to tell you that they are treated poorly in hospitals and public places, and how they are often unfairly discriminated against by other members of society because of their drug use. They tell you they are often discouraged because people do not see their accomplishments and only see their struggles. So after reading that particular story, that vignette, I would like you to answer these questions. So take a few moments. So the first one is, can you think of a time when someone failed to see your accomplishments? So just pause, and even if you feel comfortable, you can write that down, or you can add that in the chat. Go, can you think of a time when someone failed to see your accomplishments? And then what differs from your situation, that one where someone maybe failed to see your accomplishments, compared to the stranger? What differs about your situation compared to the stranger? And then the next one is, what would you say to the stranger to make him feel better about his current situation? What would you say to the stranger to make him feel better about his current situation? And again, I would love to know if anyone's willing to share that in the chat. I know it, I know that sometimes that's feels very vulnerable to put what you might say to someone. What might you say to that stranger to make him feel better about his current situation? And then what kind of positive impact do you think your comments will have on the stranger? What kind of positive impact do you think your comments will have on the stranger? And then the last one, how can you make a positive impact on other people like the stranger in the future? How can you make a positive impact on other people like the stranger in the future? Yeah, I love that, Genevieve. I hope this person would feel validated as a human being. Yeah, Bobby.
Rebecca, I think this is it's a really challenging example, you know, and for somebody like myself, I've always felt like I'm a little socially awkward when
Mm,
connecting with other people,
yeah.
particularly over something so personal. And
Yeah.
I would be curious, as kind of a professional in this field, what would you recommend? I mean, because I feel like I wouldn't want to invalidate their experience.
Mm, yeah.
But I'd also want to be really sincere, to try to connect, because there are things that I think I can personally say I've experienced, where people haven't seen what I perceived were my accomplishments, you know,
Yeah.
but I would feel like maybe they wouldn't quite resonate, or I don't know. I'm just curious, kind of, how would you respond?
Yeah. Do you mean to the what kind of positive, what kind of thing would you say to the stranger to make him feel better?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
or the your own, because you don't write yeah, Kristen is putting in there, I would try to reflect back strangers' accomplishments. That's the, because you don't have to say like, oh, I had the same thing happen to me, but mine was different because I'm a female, and and my male boss didn't see my accomplishments, right? um, you could just I would, it's exactly what Kristen said, I would reflect back their experience, like, yeah, it sounds like you're really skilled in this particular area, and that people are not treating you in the same way due to your drug use. Like, it can be as simple as, I see you, and we're going to talk about active listening, or some people refer to reflective listening as that part of it, right? Like, I see you, and I and encourage them. I love that Kristen also had that, to be a cheerleader, and to so it could be reflecting back their accomplishments. It could also be saying like, um, validating their emotions, right? It could be saying, uh, also, it's not just, it's not just you. I've been there too. You can't say that. Like, yeah, people can be really biased in a lot of different ways. Positive impact, you know, so what do you think, having someone, I'll turn it back around to anyone else. what other things might be positive besides being validated or having their feelings heard, their accomplishments seen, their, I love that what Kristen didn't include and what we aren't talking about here is giving them advice, right? That might not be something that we want to do. We might just want to be there for what that is. I personally, if I was having somebody give me just like, wow, it sounds like you really have had a lot of training, or wow, it sounds like you haven't really been heard, that to me allows me the opportunity to kind of continue being me and continue going forward, if that makes sense.
I think that I think that a person, you don't know them, so you have to validate them that they're human and understand them that they're human. And
Yes.
and I would just say, just keep on doing what you're doing. You know yourself, you know your self-confidence, you know your accomplishments.
Yeah.
That's
I
what I
love
would
that.
say.
Yep. Yeah. Like validating them as a human. It kind of goes back to that piece of understanding that when we look at everything, we're all just humans trying to do the best that we can with the life that we have. And that for other people to be like, yeah, it's tough being a human. Like there's so many things that are tough about it for all of us. Yeah, unsolicited advice. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's really easy for us to think like, "Oh, well, have you?" This is one that people will come to me and if I say something and they'll, "Well, have you tried?" And I'm always like, I didn't ask for your unsolicited advice. Yeah. I love that. So this particular reflection exercise with that particular vignette has been shown to increase positive empathy. Just that exact vignette with these exact questions, because as you're seeing, it requires us to look inward of like, okay, if I was sitting next to this person and there is this actual human who's having a hard time and struggling, even though he's done all this training, even though he has this experience, right? So that gives that increase in empathy. So I know that Genevieve also mentioned the little recipe cards. These are some of the little recipe cards. They have a recipe on the opposite side, but this is what it says. So when we understand a little bit more, sometimes knowledge can also help increase empathy. When we understand that substance misuse is a chronic illness or disorder, right? When we get that it is not this personal choice, right? That it's chronic, it's treatable, and it's not in some way a reflection of that individual, right? That it's not a weakness or a moral failing. That what we know about using particular substances is they actually make these long lasting changes in the brain and the body. And I think that's what one of these things that when we can share this information, it can help again with the increasing the empathy because it can have the possibility of, oh, here's this individual and what they're going through, and we know this knowledge, right? And we can pass that along to other people. This is an important way to start practicing, right, with empathy is understanding like, okay, where are the knowledge pieces? We also know that over time, these changes in the brain and the body increase the desire for even more drugs and eventually make it difficult to control the desire to use these substances. So we know that treatment works. We know that recovery is possible. Again, I'm probably preaching to the choir about this of people who understand this. But to know, to have these pieces of information available and spread again through awareness and community, right? That this is the empathy piece. When we understand that, then we can start to cultivate. And we're going to do that. We're going to practice today with Active listening and non-judgmental communication. That's one way that we can help to cultivate empathy. And identifying and challenging biases that might be there, self-biases as well, right? So we're going to look at that today. And then using that self-empathy or self-compassion as a pathway for empathy to others. So we're going to do a little practice, a little playing with this. Again, many of you probably know active listening. I wanted to just give you kind of the basics of it, because there's a lot of research behind active listening. It is very well known, and it's been shown that when people are trained in active listening, that it can really make some huge benefits. So people who are trained in that on a suicide line, if they're trained in active listening, that the increase in empathy goes up as well. So it's connected to empathy. So some of the different pieces of it, of active listening, are to be involved, right? And to give the person unconditional attention. So again, we can go back to that vignette of the person on the bus. When you are with a person with unconditional attention, that in and of itself is the beginning of empathy, right? Because you are present and you are there in that moment with them. Another piece of active listening is to paraphrase the speaker's message, whether it be content or feelings. And I'm going to, for those of you who know me from the Mindfulness Mondays, it's without judgment, right? So it goes back to some of those core pieces of being present and listening without judgment, withholding that judgment, so that you can then restate what they say in terms of what you think they're trying to say. I trained active listening I used to teach speech language pathologists when they were going to be dealing with parents or spouses or their clients, how to use active listening for the counseling component. And this piece of it, I would even have them start with almost repeating exactly what someone said so that you got their words. And then you can kind of begin to change that over time, where you actually reflect. If someone says, I'm feeling really frustrated, you can just say, sounds like you're really frustrated. You can say it as simply as that. Or, yeah, you're really frustrated. And the third part of active listening then is to ask questions to encourage elaborations or beliefs on their feelings. And this is usually encouraged as an open-ended, right? To ask an open-ended, not a yes/no question, but one that requires them to have some more information there. And so I go into a little more detail about this. Here are just some tips. Again, be fully present in your conversation. Show interest by practicing good eye contact. This one is often we don't realize that we may not have this. And again, there are cultural differences, so do be aware of that. But anytime that you're aware of eye contact or other nonverbal cues like head nodding or having an open body posture instead of having your arms closed off, that is going to give that message, I'm here present with you and I'm listening. Again, asking open-ended questions. You can paraphrase what has been said and reflect it back. And this is one that I think is really important, is to listen for understanding rather than to respond. So most of us, when we're having a conversation, we're thinking, how am I going to respond to that? What am I going to say? Instead of, I really want to understand what this person is saying, right? And again, that last part, withholding judgment and advice for that piece. So I wanted to give this example of active listening so that you can kind of see what that might look like. So these are two people, Lisa and Jody. This is just it's just a very simple example. I'm sorry to dump this on you, but I had a fight with my sister and we haven't spoken since. I'm upset and don't know who to talk to. Jody says, no problem. Tell me more about what happened. It's an open-ended question. It's not really a question, but it's an open-ended statement. Well, we were arguing about what to do for our parents' anniversary. I'm still so angry. Oh, that's tough. You sound upset that you're not speaking because of it. So you're reflecting back what's been heard. Yes, she just makes me so angry. She assumed I would help her plan this elaborate party. I don't have time. It's like she couldn't see things from my perspective at all. Wow, that's too bad. How did that make you feel? Another open-ended question. Frustrated, angry, maybe a bit guilty that she had all these plans and I was the one holding them back. Finally, I told her to do it without me, but that's not right either. Jody, sounds complicated. I bet you need some time to sort out how you feel about it. So she's not judging how she feels about it or what her response was. Yes, I guess I do. Thanks for listening. I just needed to vent. So it's this just an example of how some of those questions go. I always find if you don't know what to say with someone, if you go back to that bus scenario, if someone says something to you, it's always safe to just reflect back. Oh, you've been having trouble getting jobs because of your drug use, right? So simple. And yet, the presence of being actively listened to. So I'm curious if any of you have tried this with other people, just in a regular conversation, because many times I find people are starving to be listened to in this present way. So, oops, I went a little too fast. So just think about, I'd love to think about when was the last time you were really present in a conversation with someone, especially a hard conversation with an individual who maybe was having big emotions or was struggling with something, or if you have someone who has a substance use challenge in their life, perhaps you have a recollection of the conversation. Again, without judgment for yourself, right? This is not a place for judgment. We're just considering, right? What would it be like if you reflected simply how they felt, what they said, and their own experiences, right? So just take a moment to think about that and how that might go for you. And I see there's a chat, but I can't get to it. Oh, Kristen, yeah. When your daughter, yeah, she just wanted to talk about it, right? So reflecting that and reflecting it back. And I will say, I have teenagers, and I will reflect back. And often, if I use the wrong word, they will call me on it. You know, if I don't reflect back exactly, like if they say, I am so mad, and I go, it sounds like you're frustrated. And they go, no, I'm mad. And it's like, oh, yeah, like it really matters the words that you use. So let's take a moment and just pause on our own biases, right? Recognizing where that stigma might be in your own life. So it can be a pretty open-ended question, right? What are your current biases? And perhaps they might be something that you don't even think about. Like maybe you have a bias, I'm going to use something pretty neutral here. Maybe you have a bias against summer squash, right? Like maybe you just don't like summer squash and you have a bias against it. Or, so you might have some little stigmas that are about preferences or worldviews. And they might be larger, right? They might be current biases against the way things should be. So just take a moment and jot down, what are your current biases that you can even just name, and see if you can stretch a little in terms of what you notice as a bias. And just see if you can write down one or two, maybe even three. And then let's go a little more specific. All right, so maybe you think, well, I have a bias towards, maybe you recognize that you have a bias towards substance misuse. maybe because of your own experiences, maybe because of what you've been, the beliefs that have been passed down through society, through family. So even that question, you can do that same practice of just sitting with, do I have stigma? Do I have biases or beliefs towards individuals who have this substance misuse? Right? And you can just kind of check, you can even use your body to feel into that. Does that feel uncomfortable to just look at that? And how do I react to people who are struggling with substance misuse? What is my experience when I know that, or see that, or experience that, or even hear a story about it? And then, would I treat someone with drug use differently than someone with any other disorder or disease? For instance, cancer, right? Would I treat someone with drug use differently than someone with any other disorder or disease? Right? And, just pause and imagine you can have that same scenario, someone next to you on a bus who's telling you that they have cancer and that they haven't been hired for jobs, versus someone who's sitting next to you on a bus who said they haven't been hired for jobs, or they keep, having a hard time with jobs because of the drug use. And just notice what happens in the mind, what thoughts come up, what emotions come up, what arises for you. So noticing, again, this goes back to the whole Ripples of Recovery Foundation, because that can be the awareness piece of not just awareness in a community, but self-awareness, so that we can start to see, oh, is there stigma internally first, right? Is that here? Are we willing to do the hard work of looking at what's here? And so we're going to do another little practice, right? Of imagining. Now we've imagined ourselves sitting next to someone, and I want you to imagine that it's you that's struggling with a substance misuse disorder, right? And the first point in this trajectory is, what led you to that point? If there you are now the one who's dealing with that. What led you to that? Was it stress or pain, trauma? Or something else? And then knowing that, imagining that you are that person, how do you think that people look at you? What do you hear them say? And the next one is, what do you feel when seeking help? What do you feel when you're seeking help? Is it shame or fear or hope? And then what support would make a difference for you? What support would make a difference for you? So, from that place of being in that position, of thinking about how empathy in that point, in that interaction, can change how the recovery process may go. So, just knowing that there's this almost, to me, it's almost like a movement of literally walking in their shoes and imagining what that would be like. And then as we come back to ourselves to understand, like, oh, what would I want in that situation? How would I feel? And so this was shared with me that someone on social media posted as a family member of someone with addiction. One thing you never want to do is watch someone you love who has fought so hard to beat addiction throw everything away and sink back into a life that will most likely lead to jail or death. You want to grab them and shake them and scream, "What are you doing?" But at some point you realize it wouldn't make a bit of difference. So you sit back and watch the tragedy unfold as if you are watching a movie, feeling helpless to stop it, feeling like you haven't done enough to help, even though you know only the addict can help themselves. Battling addiction is a beast for the person addicted and for the ones who love them. So, with that understanding, with that empathy, one of the tools that I love to use when thinking about empathy that has been studied to also increase empathy is the practice of loving kindness, which has been shown to not only increase compassion and empathy, but also has been found to decrease opioid craving and lower the odds of opioid misuse in individuals. So I thought we could practice a little together in the time that we have remaining, just a short one, to have that own experience of empathy and compassion for both ourselves and for others. So I have the phrases that we'll use. We'll first use "may I be well." We'll go through that, and then we'll imagine an individual who may be going through some challenges with substance use, and "may you be well." We'll change it to that languaging. So I invite you to, if you feel comfortable, to find a place where you can maybe soften your eyes or close your eyes if you feel safe to do so. Please find something that feels comfortable for you. And just bring your awareness to the breath, noticing how it feels to breathe in and breathe out. And as you're breathing in and out, just noticing how your physical body feels as you bring attention and awareness to it. And then imagine there is this opportunity for you to bring this loving kindness to yourself. So I'm going to say these phrases a few times. I want you to practice this. This is the "may I be well." So we're going to start with I. Imagine yourself there in front of you. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be free from suffering. May I be happy. And may I be healthy. May I live in joy and peace. And just notice for a moment how it feels to say those phrases. And we'll repeat them again. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be free from suffering. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live in joy and peace. And then just allow that image of you to fade as you've offered that loving kindness and compassion to yourself. And we'll imagine next someone that maybe you have a great deal of love and affection for. Perhaps it's a loved one, family member, or maybe even a four-legged animal, someone that has a feeling, you have a feeling of goodwill towards. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live in joy and peace. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live in joy and peace. And then allow that person to fade into the distance and imagine someone that may be neutral, that you may not have any knowledge of who they are, maybe a grocery store clerk. And we'll say those phrases again. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live in joy and peace. And then allowing that person to fade into the distance and imagining someone who may be dealing with substance use challenges. And just imagine them in front of you. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live in joy and peace. And then allowing that image to fade as well. And just noticing how your body feels. Imagining that you can send this loving kindness not only to individuals, but on a broader perspective out into the world. And then taking a nice, long, slow, deep breath in, breathing in and breathing out, and slowly opening your eyes and wiggling your fingers and toes, and coming back to being here, knowing that at any time, this practice, and it is a practice, right, of there are many different ways to practice this, loving kindness, but it is something that we can use it to increase our capacity for empathy. In very traditional practices of it, we can expand it to people that we may have challenges with in the world. So to all sorts of people. So I wanted to leave some time for questions, but I just wanted to kind of leave some recommendations, some possibilities for things of ways to use empathy and to help reduce the stigma, whether it be your own or through encouraging others in the world. Right. So the very first, this is kind of the beginning of what we looked at was, okay, we need to explore our own biases. Where are we biased in the world? What viewpoints might we have that we can take an inventory on to see, well, what is it that we believe? And I always, there are certain times when I've seen things of what other people have written that may have been in direct opposition to what I believe. And I can have that glimpse of a moment where I can be like, oh, they believe this. And I believe that. And that's why we're not seeing eye to eye, is they have a very different set of beliefs than I do. And it was almost like it allowed me to see, instead of, well, I believe this and I'm right and you're wrong, it was that, oh, there are these biases that we both have. And that's why we're not meeting in the middle, is that they're thinking this and I'm thinking that. So to be able to explore your own biases around stigma, what stigmas you might have, can be a huge benefit to really having a more compassionate conversation with individuals in general. The second part is to practice self-compassion for yourself. By bringing self-compassion, you have the opportunity to then mirror that to other individuals, right? That when you are kind, compassionate, and loving to yourself, that practice, that soundtrack becomes the same for others, of like, wow, it sounds like you're having a really hard day. I see that you're trying really hard. Those kind of phrases can be, for ourselves, the beginning of that support for others. And then, of course, practicing empathy towards others, practicing that active listening, walking a mile in their shoes, compassion for ourselves as the beginning for others. And then the fourth point here is to commit to one action to reduce stigma. So I would love to hear, what's one small step or one small action that you can commit to in order to reduce stigma around substance use or abuse in your own life or in your community. And I will open it up to hear if there are any. I would love to hear if you guys have any questions about that. And I will stop share so that I can see you all. I would love to, if you have any feedback or any suggestions or things that you've tried that may have been helpful in reducing stigma in your own community or in your own life, specifically with empathy. And if not, that's okay too. But just to, and I'll say, for me, just to be able to reflect, to take that few moments to say, gosh, those beliefs, that those long held beliefs are, can be a challenge to kind of, to shovel out of, the
Unhook.
roots are so deep that it can be helpful to kind of look at them every once in a while to loosen the soil and loosen the grip of them.
I would agree. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I think I love that you can bring it back to empathy for self. Because if we don't have self-compassion, if we can't, I have found in my own life, if I can't be non-judgmental towards myself, then it's more difficult to extend that out. And understanding, I think, that addiction is a brain disease. It is a
Yes.
disease. It's not, they're not doing it just to, make me mad so, or
It's
irritate me,
right,
you know.
exactly. It does make to have that understanding and knowledge, and that it's like even with the use um, of like even that the rewiring of the brain that happens that we know scientifically of when the use of drugs happens, it changes the whole pathway and how things are perceived and decisions that are made that has absolutely nothing to do with an individual, a personality, or anything, or any of the other things
Other
that most
stuff.
people. Yeah, exactly.
And I think stepping away from the chatter, how
Mm,
how people on drugs are or portrayed in the media, in
yeah,
movies, in being able to step away from that
yeah,
and look at the person, see the person
yeah.
instead of the addiction. And I think I would echo what Bobby said. This was a great overview.
Good.
Thank you so, so much. I want to remind everyone that we really, really would appreciate and actually need you to complete our brief anonymous training survey. I have the link in the chat. I'm going to throw the slide up one more time, but I wanted to say thank you to Rebecca for a wonderful, wonderful training. Thank you so much. I'll make sure to get her presentation out to all of you in the follow-up email. So I'm gonna throw up the slide real quick, and if you could take just a moment to copy that link down, or if you're like let's see, do I have it? Is it up there? Good.
It's up there.
Uh, great, great. Or if you're like so many of the kids, you just scan the QR code. whatever, whatever is easiest for you. Um, leave that up for a second. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. Um, and thanking Rebecca yet again for another wonderful training.
Thank you all for being here.
And we will have two more trainings. They'll be on the workshop Wednesdays. I always include that information in your emails, and we'll be sending out newsletters and training stuff. So, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. There we go.